harsh winter knows what woolen socks are. So joint venture, yes, but please don't judge my effort completely. Thank you.
Of course, that absolutely wasn't my intention. I live in Estonia, and I also know a lot about the importance of good quality socks, as does my wife and my mother-in-law. Yes, thank you very much.
Beth, I'm very sorry to say, but we can barely hear you. It's as though you're standing about 300 miles.
Favorite group of people who look after this mess in Ukraine. Anyway, I want to say something, and I'm going to thread a few things together. So nobody react. It's just threading a few things together. I love what Nina is saying. All right. So in this horrible war, I think we need to consider many strands. My stepfather served in the Korean War, and for the rest of his life, he swore, I mean, literally swore, he said, my feet are never going to be wet and cold again for the rest of my life. I mean, it just burned a memory into him about how horrible it was to be stuck up there in Korea with wet socks. It was horrible. So I hear what Nina is saying. And I think it can be used in wonderful ways. One, it helps women who have this skill to feel like they're doing something. Two, if Nina can get a group of these women together and maybe get a journalist or a TV reporter to cover it up there in Finland, it further opens up awareness and publicity for what's going on in Ukraine at a different level. Maybe some people would hear it through, the knitting of socks, where that through the horrors of torture, they tune it out. And then some kind of collaboration might be loved to make it a zero sum of only send money, or don't do this. There's got to be some way to allow an idea like this to have a little bit of space and welcome. I get it. I remember when the war first started, people in the United States were sending boxes of used clothes. I mean, ridiculous. What a nuisance. It got in the way. But knowing from my stepfather, socks in the winter, hugely important. I hear her. And Nina, if you could find a credible supply chain, a very reliable actor, donating these socks, I think it's a lovely idea. I just wanted to weigh in, looking at this a little differently than either or. Thanks, you guys.
I think that's an excellent attitude, Beth. That's really good insight there, and I think you're exactly right saying that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Beth. I want to clarify. It wasn't my intention to pee all over anybody's idea. Having served in the armed forces myself, I do appreciate the importance of socks. It is an ancient importance. We have letters from Roman soldiers to their mothers serving on the Antonine Wall in Scotland. The soldiers were serving on the Antonine Wall; their mothers weren't. We have letters from them home begging for socks because they had cold feet, because the weather in Scotland is horrible. So yes, it is a known issue. It is an ancient issue. My point was not to pee on anybody's idea. If you feel this is an initiative you can get off the ground, then it sounds like Nina is your Finnish lady. Thank you very much, Beth and Nina, for that input. Nina, follow up, please, and then we'll go to Sojo.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Beth. And if you can please, I follow you now, if you can follow me. And actually what you said about people feeling helpless and they don't know how to help, this would be a really good way for them to feel like they are useful for this cause. So yeah, that's like a win-win situation. And I actually have got quite good like a journalist friends. So this was a great idea. Thank you so much.
Great. Love you all. I've got to go, but love you all. Bye-bye.
There you go. Thank you very much, Beth.
Thank
Thank you, Nina. Sojo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dom. Good evening, all. Yeah, I think Beth's input was actually rather valuable. Nina, perhaps you and Beth could speak about this in private, and perhaps you could contact one of the trusted aid groups that are working in Ukraine, like, for example, Konstantin. I think he has contacts there. And Ukraine Aid Ops, that's Harry from Estonia, those kind of people. If you get this initiative going, and then you could, perhaps organize to send it to one place where they could distribute these things. But as a whole, I have to agree also with Tim's sort of main point, is that unless you do this in an organized fashion, like I think Nina is going to be doing now, the best way to donate is to donate your money to these aid organizations like Maria Aid, Georgian Legion, Ukraine Aid Ops, Come Back Alive. Because they have all the contacts there, and they get asked for specific things. And who knows better what they need than the Ukrainians themselves. So, yeah. Anyway, that was a rather good input from Beth there. I'm glad. I'm glad you managed to have that little discussion.
And I think thank you very much for that, Sojo. Yes, and I would like to again stress the importance of Ukrainian organization and the Ukrainian chain of command, because, as I said, the Ukrainian armed forces is a system. It knows how to allocate its resources best. They will have a SOC guy, and he will know which units need SOCs and which units have plenty of SOCs. Thank you very much. And which units need SOCs more than other units. And this is important. A unit that has no SOCs but is not due to go down range for another month is not going to need SOCs as much as the unit that's going next week. And the Ukrainian chain of command will know this. They will organize this. We know they're jolly effective. And so there is a need for a degree of coordination with the Ukrainian armed forces on this. And a number of the better recognized charities, they will, they appreciate this. And I think that kind of coordination is crucially important. Nina.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you, Sojo. And I was not thinking that each person who Ukraine, absolutely not. This Ukraine, absolutely not. This has to be like organized. So give that impression that people are just randomly sending socks to Ukraine.
Perfect. Thank you, Nina. Thank you, Sojo. Right. Shall we talk about some news that very recently leaked out? I think that'd be of some interest to some people.
Excuse me.
Frodo, would you?
Yeah, Frodo. No, it's right. Frodo, there's a little button at the bottom. It has like a heart and a plus. If you click that, then you can put your hand up like Sojo did just now, but it doesn't work if your mic is unmuted. Just so you know for next time. But Frodo, if you want to go ahead, feel free.
Yes, sorry about that. This is completely new.
For next time.
Yeah, thank you. No, so I was just listening to the discussion about aid, and I mean, I'm no expert in the area, but I've been briefly involved in it a couple of times. And one thing that is actually worth considering is that, sorry, my car is making noise, is that when you ask people to give money, they might give $50. But if you go and you ask them for clothes, they might give stuff that's worth like 20 or 30 times as much. People just clean out their closets. So that's why it's actually worth giving stuff and not just money. And if you go to at least, so I'm from Norway, and if you go to the embassy's page, the Ukrainian embassy's page in Norway, you will see they have lists of stuff that they need and clear instructions on how to provide it to them. So I just wanted to just throw that in here. That was it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Yeah, that's a good point. Likewise, if you have pallets worth of stuff and you want to send it through MriyaAid, there's a contact form on the website as well. If you're in the medical field, perhaps, and have boxes of syringes and the likes, or bandages or anything of the sort, you can go through there as well. Just lots of options. Thank you very much, Frode. That's very true. And if you are connected, or you are a major garment manufacturer, especially for sort of hiking clothes and the like that are specialized for very cold weather and very resistant to things, then you can talk straight to MriyaAid, and they'll be very happy to take your call and help out with the logistics of everything. Thank you, Frode. Soja.
Thank you. Yes, well, apparently there are reports of Ukrainian forces having crossed over to the Oskil River, and on the eastern side of Kupiansk having liberated, or well, whatever, they've liberated Kupiansk's eastern side. And also, sorry for all my pauses and and eyeing. Sorry, I know it's so distracting. And also, they're reportedly pushing south in the Borova direction. Has anybody heard anything about this, or has any comments on this?
Thank you, Soja. This is the sort of news I was going to go into. Let's just paint a bit of a mental map for anyone who's missed things a little bit. So Kupiansk is on the north end of this big reservoir on the Oskil River. The Oskil River flows north to south from the Russian border, then through Kupiansk. And at Kupiansk, this really wide reservoir starts, right? So the river itself, who knows how wide the river would normally be, maybe 40 meters, maybe 50 meters, maybe 20 meters. But then under Kupiansk, so that is to say south of Kupiansk, downstream from Kupiansk, it becomes really wide, like on the order of a few hundred meters, almost as wide as the Dnieper River. And that's because the town of Oskil, at the southern end of this reservoir, there's a dam across it. And that then causes, of course, water to back up a little bit and form this reservoir. Now, at Kupiansk, forces have clearly crossed. There's tons of video evidence now that they have definitely managed to not just cross the river at Kupiansk, but secure the crossing at Kupiansk, secure the left bank, that is to say the east bank at Kupiansk, and are now pushing south along the big highway that is runs along that river. Not quite from Kupiansk, but then from Sinkov and down to Borova. Borova is a city. Sinkov and Borova are both cities on the left bank of the river. That is the east bank of the river, at least in part. Now, some of those bridges were previously blown up, and Borova is the last crossing before you get to Oskil, if I remember correctly. It's the southernmost crossing until you get to the dam at Oskil. So Ukrainians are really clearing up that left bank of the Oskil River now. They were already on the left bank some days prior, apparently, but now they're really clearing out all of the left bank of the Oskil River. This is the last bit of Kharkiv Oblast that Russia has not completely withdrawn from, thoroughly and fully. And it's one more direction in which Liman is going to be soon very much completely cut off, and the situation there made rather untenable for the Russians. That's at least my very simplified understanding. But if someone like CJ, perhaps, who's much more qualified to discuss this, would wish to jump up and talk a little bit about it, I think we'll all be very happy about that. Let me see if there's enough praise to incentivize them. Who knows? But it's very good and it's very important. Now, obviously, all of these areas, right, just on the left bank of the river, were sufficiently close to Ukrainian artillery positions. let's see if this works. Let's talk about artillery. We're sufficiently close to Ukrainian artillery positions for Ukrainians to be able to, destroy most things that they saw going past there, and making it very difficult for the Russians to live there, and to maintain their positions there. But obviously now that they're clearing them out, that will make the last bit of your Kharkiv Oblast that wasn't previously secured, liberated, and also make the situation for the remaining Russian troops down south in Liman, the left bank of the Oskil, completely untenable. So, Joe.
Thank you. Perhaps CJ is busy, but I would just like to remark that he's not too busy to be sending laughing emojis, Domin. I don't know quite what to say about that.
I know. It is how it is. There are more laughing emojis coming. And also the 30-second delay, right? Because of the speaker listening thing. I don't know what to do to incentivize him to come on. Maybe I have to talk badly about the 80-second and airborne. I wouldn't dare. Chris.
Is that me, gents?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Sorry. Bit of shock at that. First of all, can I just thank you for helping me make my way through Twitter Spaces, which has been a bit of a journey. But you guys have said some things that have helped me with as I've gone through. So I mean, just to say, guys.
Chris, sorry, can I just jump in with something? Apparently, according to the Kiev Post, the Ukrainian army now says that they have completely cleared all of the left bank of the Oskil River in its entirety, which I wasn't aware of before because when I started speaking, it wasn't out yet. Sorry about that, Chris. Carry on, please.
No, absolutely. It's great to have that update, actually. So thank you, ever so much. I think I only found you guys a week or two ago or something like that, and I've been listening. And like other people, I'm probably going to be getting divorced soon because the wife thinks something's going on. So absolutely amazing.
Chris, just put it on speaker, and then it's not weird anymore, right? And then she knows that nothing untoward's going on.
No, thank you, but that probably won't work. But thanks for that anyway. Suggestion. So anyway, absolutely great to see James Vasquez here as well, and to hear him. I heard all of that. Absolutely brilliant, absolutely amazing guy. It's just so amazing, and obviously his backstory and that. When you realise, exactly why is that just incredible. I was actually trying to just catch up with you. Do you remember? I don't know if you were all on, but do you remember you guys were talking about people wanting to verify that they were actually connecting with Ukrainian companies? I don't know who was on at that time.
But there was this sort of European night by any chance?
I can't. What I believe it was that that there were people that were wanted to donate or wanted to do business with Ukrainian companies, right? And they wanted some way of verifying whether they were real or not. It would have been a discussion that you guys had 2 or 3 days ago, something like that.
I don't think I recall it. Tim, do you recall such a discussion? I don't think I do.
I'm afraid I don't. I mean, Chris, we'd be happy to go into it if you can clarify a little.
Well, okay. So just to let you know, guys, I obviously haven't spoken before, right? But I am basically working with a lot of Ukrainian companies, basically helping them get business in the rest of the world, and also working on investment in projects for the future, right? So I'm coming across various Ukrainian companies, and there's one that is called U-Control. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. U-Control, and they've actually produced an app which is called RU Assets, which means Russian assets, right? And that is a tracking tool to help people who want to track down Russians that have been sanctioned and give them, like basically all the information they need to do that, right? But the U-Control part of it is a Ukrainian company that indeed allows you to verify the details of, each Ukrainian company. So I don't, if that's of interest, which I know it definitely was to somebody. I can't remember the whole conversation, but I know that there were people that wanted that, ability to check Ukrainian companies. So
thank you very much, Chris. That's fantastic.
Okay, great. Okay, I'll leave it at that for that. Well, can I just throw one other thing in, if that's okay?
Go ahead.
So let me just check something here, right? Am I right in saying that, like pre the war, the Chinese were actually doing more revenue with Ukraine than the Russians were? I believe that's the case, right? Okay.
That's a difficult one. I can tell you that China was buying an awful lot of stuff from Ukraine, specifically neon. I can tell you that they were buying from Ukraine in vast quantities. You don't ask me why I know that one, but I am not entirely sure. I would have think that China was definitely spending more money on stuff coming from Russia, simply because Russia uses so much. Produces so much natural resources, or has so much natural resources. But beyond that, okay. I'm really not sure. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's a comparable number at the very least. That's for sure.
Okay, so this ties in again with another conversation that you guys had, where you were talking about Motor Sich, or somebody was talking about Motor Sich, right? And it also ties in with the fact that, again, earlier this morning when you were talking about China, somebody was saying, well, one of the things that China don't have is like gas turbine engines and that.
And of course, Motor Sich are fantastic at those, yeah.
Yes, and so did you know that the Motor Sich, that the Chinese were blocked from acquiring Motor Sich?
Yes, I did.
You did. Okay, in 2021. Now, to me, it just seemed like I was basically going, oh, okay. This is interesting. So obviously the Russians are pissed off with Ukraine, but also the Chinese were as well. And is there anything in that in terms of conversations with the Russians and the Chinese?
I mean, not in that, right? Because at least by now China will have realized that Russia's destroying Ukraine.
Yep.
It's not very good if you're trying to make gas turbines there, right?
Yep.
To put it bluntly. But what I want to say is, look, part of the reason why Motor Sich wasn't allowed to be sold to China is because Motor Sich is a very important part of Ukrainian defense industry as well, right? Those Bayraktar TB2 drones. Do you know who makes the engines for those?
I do, Motor Sich.
Well, exactly. Well, you do, and I do, but now everybody does. So Motor Sich is a wanted, quite old company in Zaporizhia, in the city of Zaporizhia. So it's not under occupation currently, right? It's about let's say 60-70 kilometers to the north of the front lines. But it's really important. It's really super important. And there's a reason why Russians hit it with a number of cruise missiles over time, if memory serves correct, a few months ago. Yeah.
Indeed, I did wonder about that as well. Okay, thank you very much for confirming that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chris. Yeah, no, it's great. It's fantastic to be highlighting an excellent company like Motor Sich. So many types of aircraft use those things, all manner of aircraft that were manufactured in the Soviet Union and Russia and Ukraine. Use those engines, and they're just really important. And there's a reason why Ukraine didn't let them be sold to China, because they just weren't so sure about that, right? Similar reasons why buying land in Ukraine is very difficult, because they're just not sure if that's the best thing to do quite yet. Sales of agricultural land are practically impossible for now. And as Ukraine gets ever closer to the European Union, of course, procedures and rules and processes will come into force, right? And that is something that's really going to help Ukraine grow and develop in the future as well, because it's much easier. Sometimes it's difficult to make changes to the judicial system, but more importantly, the bureaucratic system, but kind of being pushed into an already developed, subtle, thorough system full of checks and balances, right? Then it makes some stuff easier, and that is going to unleash a lot of this hidden potential in Ukraine as well. This kind of, I don't know if you were listening about 2 hours ago, when we were talking to Pavel.
Yes.
Right? He's well, exactly. Right? This is the sort of stuff that we're getting on with him about as well.
Yes, I've tried to reach out to him actually. So thank you very much for that. That was a very interesting conversation and very relevant to some of the things that I'm doing. So thank you for that. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Chris.
Okay.
Adrian,
thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Adrian, good evening.
Hey, good evening, Domen. Sorry I missed James and also the Ukrainian gentleman who was talking about economics.
He's coming back. James is coming back up, Adrian.
Okay.
He said he has to do social things for now because he's somebody's guest. But he should be coming back up later on.
Excellent.
Don't promise anything, but he said he would.
Well, I'll stick around for a while. Actually, I requested because I heard this about the sale of land, and I wanted to share a story. But I wanted to ask you, Domen, can one buy land in Ukraine now, a foreigner, technically?
In wartime, I'm not sure. Other than that, my understanding is that different types of things are regulated differently. So if you want to buy an apartment, you can do that.
Yeah, I know.
If you want to buy a house with some land around it, you can do that. If you want to buy a 500-hectare field, don't think you can. Oh, but we're going to get... see, we have a former Ukrainian member of parliament, Victoria Votsitska, is going to jump up and explain exactly what the rules are, because she understands this in great detail. Victoria,
she wrote them.
I want to hear her, actually. I just want to briefly say something tied to this, because I heard, and I really want to hear and understand, because I need the counter. So one vector of Russian propaganda that was in Romania a few years back, and it was basically promoting anti-EU sentiment, was saying that Romania is selling its beautiful agricultural land to foreigners, to foreign conglomerates, and basically 70% of Romanian agricultural land is owned by foreigners. That can be demonstrated as false. It's more complicated than that. But now they're doing the same in Romania. In the Romanian news, they're saying this about Ukraine. So they're mudding the other. The war is bad, but look, the foreigners are taking advantage. They already sold their agricultural land to, this is what my father shared. He supports Ukraine, but he also reads shit news, and he asked me about it. And all the time I'm spending a lot of the time debunking shit news for my father. So if Victoria can enlighten me, I would really love to hear.
Yeah, I'm laughing because it's really funny. It's funny because Russia's really, they are so limited in their inventions. They're just copying and pasting the same propaganda and imposing it all over the world. I've heard the same stories in Latvia, in Lithuania, and in Ukraine. The same philosophy, the same propaganda was for years, for decades. And as a result, we had the moratorium on the sale of agricultural land. As Domen correctly said, if you want to buy a flat or you want to buy a house, then of course you will get the right to own the land if the land is there. But when it comes to agricultural land, there was this big theme that Ukrainian land is invaluable and no one can have the right to own it. It belongs to the whole nation. And guess what? As the result, we've ended up having big oligarchs owning or cultivating this land through different schemes.
It's kind of like a rent of sorts, right?
Yes, it was the rent, exactly. And poor people would basically give it for almost like for free, because they had no other way how they can get anything from the land. They could not cultivate it because they wouldn't be able to get any loans to buy equipment, to actually take care properly of their own land. So they would give it up, or they will just lease it to big agricultural holdings, including foreign holdings as well. We have investors from different countries in agriculture sector. But now it's legal. to buy land, sell land. The question is that we're still at the first stage. We can do it, only Ukrainian citizens can do that. But then again, it's the first step that we took to at least let Ukrainian people, ordinary people, have a choice to benefit from owning the land. They now can pledge it. They can now legally lease it. They can lend it, not lease it, and you can actually do something with it and benefit from it. When it comes to foreign investors, there are ways how you can make certain legal arrangements, but they will have certain limits as to the number of hectares that you can manage, or take care of, and cultivate it. I don't know what's the right word in English.
No,
That's
I mean, both of those work.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Victoria. Yeah, you see exactly right, and this is a part of course, the development stage that Ukraine has to go to, right, to be able to have procedures and protocols in place, and legislation in place, and the judiciary in place to be able to work through this, because it is a very important matter, and it's especially an important matter because if you do it wrong, it's very difficult to correct that for many, many decades. It's a multi-generational thing, and that's why it needs to be done carefully, needs to be done correctly. And I would say that this is where the process of getting ever closer to the European Union is going to be of some help, because it will be easier to follow already established processes, and more importantly, it will be easier to persuade all the stakeholders and legislatures to kind of fall in line and go through with it, actually, as opposed to having to put forward too many bad compromises, right? Because we all know how legislature works. In the end, no piece of legislation almost ever gets passed in a clean form. It always gets sort of modified because there's lots of partial interests that need to be satisfied. One of the benefits, in a way, of having to agree to a particular set of things that have already been tested out is that there aren't all of these additional little caveats that get included everywhere, right? And it's going to probably be a much better functioning system because of that, and that's something that's often very difficult to agree without this bigger prize at the end of the tunnel, which in this case would be EU membership, because that brings so many other economic benefits with it as well. Much easier integration with neighboring countries to the west that Ukraine really wants to be better integrated with, right? With opening of borders, customs agreements, and the like. And I think that this is going to have a really positive effect. Maybe I'm a little bit too optimistic, but I really think that it's going to have a really positive effect. Victoria?
Yes, just to sum up, Russian propaganda is Russian propaganda. It's a big lie. Foreigners are not buying Ukrainian land. They're not buying it for cheap. It's not like we're selling everything that we have and becoming slaves of big international holdings. It's all just but lie.
If there's one thing that everybody has to take away from this, is it's exactly that. Russian propaganda, bunch of lies. That's all it is.
Thank you very much, Victoria. I have all the information now. Next time I talk with my dad to enlighten him. Thank you.
You're welcome. Exactly,
isn't it? See, I really love it that we have you around sometimes now, Victoria, because of little inputs like that. Can I ask you a little question? Sorry, Roy, but Victoria, I have a little question to ask you. And the question is very specific, but I think that you'll know what this is about if you have a minute. At the end of June, the 10T, TEN-T, got modified to properly include Ukraine and Moldova. A bunch of connections with Russia got erased, a bunch of connections with Ukraine and Moldova. European long-term transport plan for transport corridors, railway and road. And the big change is going north to south from Poland through Western Ukraine to Romania without having to cross the Carpathians, and that's now a major part of this, addition to the pan-European transport network. Now, I think that will be very significant. That will drive a lot of development to Ukraine, but it will also drive a lot of development to eastern Poland and the Baltics, as well as eastern Romania and Bulgaria to the south of that. I'm very excited about that, because the reason why trucks previously kind of went around that and had to cross the Carpathians, sometimes twice, was because obviously they had to leave the customs union to enter Ukraine, and then they had to re-enter the customs union to re-enter Poland, for example, when they were going from Romania to Poland, and it just wasn't that much of a useful road, a useful path because of that. And I just think this is going to drive so much integration and so much investment in all these regions, all three of which, northeastern Romania, Western Ukraine historically, as well as Eastern Poland, tended to be underinvested in. And I think this is really going to help all three regions grow considerably. And as a part of that, it's really going to help Ukraine. Now, I might be gushing a little bit too much over it, but Victoria, do you see a similar really positive feature just looking at this one element of it?
Oh, absolutely. Once we see real investments coming into fulfilling this great idea, everyone would benefit. Right now, due to Black Sea blockage, due to the fact that our sky is closed for flying, nothing flies here, right? Not a single plane, cargo, or any other.
The very first civilian plane left Lviv yesterday, that was stuck there for 6 months.
Yeah, it was a technical flight. It just Wizz Air brought its plane back that was stuck for months, starting from 24th of February. So it was not like a commercial flight. There were no passengers on that flight. They were just bringing back the plane, and that's it. But hopefully, I do hope that we will see that traffic coming back, at least from Lviv to Europe and back. I hope so, that it will happen sooner rather than later. But for that, we need to have some sort of protection. Obviously, no one will fly without proper protection of that part of Ukraine, for sure. But coming back to your question, and I hope all of our listeners, they know that unfortunately we have Eurotrack, which is one size, and we have Ukrainian, which is of a different size.
It's 8.5 centimeters wider, the distance between the two tracks on a railway.
Exactly. And it was done intentionally during Soviet times. And there were discussions, by the way, for Ukraine to increase, and it's really very important at this time, to increase the volumes of operations, of import and export operations, especially in regards to grain export, import of items of critical necessity, etc. There were ideas, and there are still ideas, to use old trucks, Euro trucks, that were coming from Poland, from Romania, and other parts, to bring them closer into, for example, closer to Lviv, which is in the western part of Ukraine. And I understand there was a such project long time ago developed. It's ready to be implemented. All the technical specifications, everything is done. It's just it needs investments. The alternative was to build a railroad according to our old specifications, or the size, to Gdansk. But Poland said to us, no. And it was back in June and July. They were really opposing this idea, saying that it will create, obviously, risks for our security, but because if worst comes to worst, we don't want to see Russian tanks using these trucks and bringing them to Gdansk. So yes, overall, what you've described, Domin, is great. Now it's the question of implementation, and the implementation really very much also depends on the security situation in Ukraine. And that brings me to my last point. Maybe it's time again to revisit and revise the idea of 100 kilometers humanitarian zone, like no-fly zone, that might be considered if and when such projects are then implemented. Should the work continue for another, let's say, 6 months or so?
So to characterize this, this would basically cover the westernmost 100 or so kilometers of Ukraine. So everything that is Chernivtsi, Rivne, and to the west of that, perhaps something along those lines, for people who are orienting on a map. Yeah, absolutely. I just want to say one little thing here. We had Alexander commissioned the CEO of Ukrzaliznytsia on a few, what is it now, 3 weeks ago, maybe something like that. And he was actually telling us that one of the things that they did was opened a standard gauge that's to Kovel. That they've expanded it all the way to Kovel while in wartime. So from Lublin, Poland to Helm, and then across the border and all the way to Kovel. And that allowed a lot more loading, unloading points there along there as well. The other two big railway projects that they were doing, one was in the south of Moldova, and obviously all of that is Soviet gauge, from Basarabeaska on the Moldovan-Ukrainian border down to southern Bessarabia, to Berezine in Ukraine, as well as a section kind of connecting, I think, Rachiv and Bushitna. I think that's roughly where the section was that they were reopening that actually runs through the Romanian part. Just noting, the wonderful work that Ukrzaliznytsia have been doing, even while in wartime, building out sections of railway that either didn't exist or had been dismantled decades ago. And I think that's really important, and that really that means a lot as well.
Absolutely, especially given the fact that we have now trucks being stuck at the border with Poland, where people are standing there from 5 to 10 days just waiting to go through the customs. Polish customs, by the way, are creating still some challenges and obstacles, but it's a work in progress, and it's moving slowly to finding the right solution with our neighbor to make sure that the trucks are going faster than they passing through the borders right now at the speed that is much slower than it used to be prior to February 24th. So the railroad, it's a big help. It's definitely a big help.
And it's really, really making a difference. Also when it comes to exports, of course, but I'm not going to talk about the millions of tons of grain. I'm going to pass it, I'm going to pass it to Joanna, who's from Romania and has some expertise in this as well. Joanna?
Yes, hello. I really wanted to chime in and tell you a few things about what's happening in Romania. First of all, yes, indeed, there were some works on infrastructure, and a train line with the Ukrainian gauge was opened into the port of Galați. So the trains that are coming from Ukraine through Moldova and through Romania are able to go directly to the port of Galați, which is quite a big port on Danube. So this is a good thing. This dates about 2 months ago. It was opened. And also we have the same problem with the trucks. There was a mobilization done back in June when the new harvest was announced in Ukraine in order to ensure the trucks for transportation, because you have to understand, on sea there are ships that can transport from 30,000 tons to 100,000 tons, so a big quantity of grain, while on truck you have 20 tons. So there are hundreds of trucks literally on every road to every border in Romania, and of course the waiting time was big, but everybody understands. So there were empty trucks going into Ukraine and full load trucks coming from Ukraine. There were some difficulties, but now the things are going better. For the border crossing, you have to understand that Romania, as well as Poland, we are the border of European Union, so we are obliged to do this border checkpoints, controls, and everything. But this is really going very slow. So they managed to ensure some border checking points, not on border, but on the periphery of other cities, so the trucks can cross the border and be checked like 100 kilometers further in order not to have such long queues. So this was done also. And for the rail, we have some difficulties in the north because we have two border crossing points for trains. But you know, Romania, it's not a very rich country also, and it's going rather difficult with the infrastructure. But it is on plan to ensure to make it viable as soon as possible. So efforts are done indeed in order to ensure this export, not only for grains, but for other products from Ukraine, and also for passing humanitarian and medical aid to Ukraine, because some trucks, instead of going empty, were going with the humanitarian and medical aid for Ukraine. If you have specific questions, I can try to answer them. Thank you.
No, that's perfect. Thank you very much, Joanna. Victoria, if you have any thoughts, go ahead, and then we can move to the other hands as well.
No comments. Thank you.
I'll make one little comment here. Right, it was really a collaboration of both Ukraine and Romania together with Moldova, and Moldovan railways really play a very important role here, especially after the destruction of the Zatoka bridge, the bridge that connects southern Bessarabia with the city of Odessa across the Dniester estuary, and because Russians destroyed that with successive caliber cruise missile strikes, the only way for Ukrainian freight by rail to reach these ports of the Danube, of Izmail and Reni in Ukraine, but also Galați in Romania, the only way to do it was to go through Moldova. And so there's an entry point across the border right in the north of Moldova. And you have trains crossing from sort of Mohil Podilsky into Moldova, driving, the trains drive, whatever they do, progressing down the length of Moldova from north to south, and then go either across from Basarabeasca to Berezin and onto Izmail, or right to the southernmost tip of Moldova, near Zhuzhuleshti, and either go to the east to Reni in Ukraine, or to west to Galați in Romania, on that refurbished 15-20 millimeter railway track that goes right into the port of Galați on the Danube. Now, as Joanna noted, of course, these ships are a lot smaller. I think the maximum is either 7,000 tons or 9,000 tons than the proper seagoing ships, but it's still so much more efficient than having to go a much longer distance by rail or road and just putting it on this medium-sized bulker instead, because there are still seagoing ships that can go up the Danube, just the smaller sizes, up to either, I think, 9,000 tons. Whereas, as Joanna quite rightly noted, a lot of these seagoing ships are a lot bigger. However, some of the ships that were stuck in the southern Ukrainian ports of Odessa, Chernomorsk, Vivdeni, for 6 months before the grain deal came into the Istanbul Initiative, 5 months, let's say, before the Istanbul Initiative came into force, some of them were much smaller, actually. And I think the smallest one I saw was 11,000 tons, that's barely bigger than the ships that go into Galați. And just the sheer added capacity because of many months without any exports, really, especially of these very low value density bulk cargo, such as agricultural products, was really important to be able to clear out as much stocks from last year as possible. That having been said, Chris.
Oh, thank you, Dima. You've actually got me really excited now. So just to let you know, I'm former Royal Navy and also a bit of a train geek, and so I was looking into all of that that area. I was trying to monitor that. What is it? There's an organisation. Is it called Trains and Grains or something? I think, that was basically covering that development there. So
I can tell you that myself and our own Craig Reagan were covering this just as well, if not better, here.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, sorry, I didn't realise they were competition. Anyway, so
No,
you almost,
it's not a competition.
yeah. Okay, so you nearly covered everything that I was curious about there. When the ships go from there up the Danube, where do they go to? Where do they typically?
So the grain usually goes just down the Danube, out of the ports of Galatz, Ismail Reni, and goes out into the Black Sea and down across the Bosphorus. Some ships got transloaded, I believe, outside of the port of Constanza onto larger, longer distance seagoing vessels. But if you just think of it, agricultural products are usually not traded that far away. That's why Ukraine was so important as an exporter of agricultural products, because it's so close to places that need them, such as Turkey, Middle East, North Africa, right? Those aren't very long distances. It's a few days sailing on a very slow bulker, going to all these places. And actually, Turkey, for example, last year, Turkey imported, I'm trying to remember how much. It was some huge number, 1.4 million tons of wheat alone, I think, from Ukraine. Ridiculous numbers, and obviously much of that demand still persisted, and just getting it through those Danubian ports, the riverine ports, these aren't very long distances to ship across. It's just across the Black Sea. It's not that giant a place. It takes a day, at most 2 days sailing. If you're going to spend more time waiting in port to get offloaded than you are sailing across the Black Sea in practice, right? So it didn't really matter so much. And having these smaller ships that maybe have 5,000 tons, 7,000 tons of grain going from the Danubian ports, that's perfectly fine. Going upstream on the Danube, we're a lot more limited, right? Up to Galatz, you can go with sort of a 7,000 ton or maybe even a 9,000 ton ship. But anywhere further up, you need smaller barges. You need the sort of barges that you see on the Rhine. That I'm sure you've seen at some point going from Rotterdam all the way up to Switzerland and back. But that's obviously a lot smaller, right? I think that's up to about 2,000, maybe 3,000 tons at most, usually. And that's just much less useful because Europe produces a lot of food, right? Places that really need need imports of grain are usually places that just grow a lot less.
Yeah, so you could. So as you said, you could go up the river. I mean, you can go up a long way, can't you? But you
can go all the way to Rotterdam.
Wow, yeah, but you just can't take it. You can't take enough.
Yeah, but also you don't need to. There's no need. There just isn't. The market isn't really there.
Okay.
That's why, right? You're going to send it to wherever your customers are, and when your customers are in Turkey and in North Africa, why would you be sending stuff up the Danube and then up the Rhine and then sail all the way around Europe, where you can just put it on a slightly bigger ship even initially and send it the much shorter way? Right? It just really comes down to that. Simple as that.
Okay. And then I learned about all the German ships that were scuttled in the Danube, and that apparently a heck of a lot. Yeah, interesting. Okay, thank you.
Yes, the Second World War. Thank you, Chris. Absolutely. There are some low water levels in some of these scuttled ships from the Second World War when the Soviets were advancing in 44, 45. They got scuttled all over the Danube to make the Danube impassable, they thought. But of course, it's not. It's perfectly well passable, nevertheless. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Roy, good evening.
Good morning for me. So basically, I remember Chris mentioned that Ukraine earlier, before this conversation begins, Chris mentioned that Ukraine is refusing to sell Chinese gas turbine engine. That is not true.
No. The company that makes them. Ukraine didn't want to sell the company Motor Sich to China. That is true. We're not going to discuss this because it is.
Yeah. So basically, because I know that is because all of Chinese Luoyang 3 class destroyer, besides the first two ships, all of the rest of them uses an engine from Ukraine. It's called the UTG 25,000. China used to use the LM 2500 from United States for their first two ships, but it was before the Tiananmen Square massacre. Afterwards, the United States started military technology embargo against China. So China turned to Ukraine and bought those engines from Ukraine and indigenously made them and called them DNDA-08. And what's even more pissed me off is after 2014, when the United States was asking the Ukraine to stop exporting military technology to Ukraine, Ukraine still was selling, because the core of this engine, the fan turbine, China is not able to make them themselves with quality products. So China was still buying them from Ukraine. China built at least 8 Type 052 destroyer with the engine from Ukraine. And these destroyers are one of the most formidable adversary we have in the open seas. And Ukraine was still selling them to China until the point of the Russian invasion in the early this year. And besides that, China's biggest engine importer is Ukraine, not Russia. China imported most of their tank engines for their ZTZ-96 tanks with the engine from the Ukraine's 6TD, the one Ukrainian used on their T-80UD. And also they used China's own indigenously built utility helicopter Z8. Oh no, Z8 and Z18 and Z20. They all use engine
nobody has any idea what you're saying anymore. It's just strings of letters and numbers. I'm very sorry to break it to you, but anyone who doesn't already know it, it's all going through 1 year, out the other.
Yeah, I hope Ukraine would learn the lesson, especially after this weekend. Oh no, this week when China did what they did with Russia. So I really hope Ukraine will learn the lesson. That money is amazing, yes, but you got to be careful where you take that money from.
I mean, I think this is very much something that's thoroughly passé at this point. Certainly at this point. Right, very good. Thank you, Roy. Douglas, good evening. Douglas?
Yes, good evening. I'm sorry, I couldn't get the microphone on. Can you hear me?
We can hear loud and clear.
Okay, great. Just a few observations coming into the weekend. You know, there's the big picture, the bigger picture, and the biggest picture. So they're concentric circles. And so you, Doman, are exceptional at geography, and you're exceptional at seeing things in the schemes of those 3 different circles. Can you give me a review of the day? I've been off of the Ukrainian circuit. So if you could do those 3 bigger and biggest events and
there have been ever more confirmations of advantageous movements of Ukrainian forces in various areas, especially around Liman and to the east of the Oskil River. We don't know exact details of it. It's not our business to know exact details of it. I think later on we'll have Yehuda and maybe even Colonel Spencer talking a little bit more about that and what lessons we can learn from that. But you know full well, Douglas, that isn't my area of expertise. And you know, some people are just scraping around in the dark. It's almost as if they needed some night vision goggles. Beyond that, what else can we say? Possibly the more important, no, actually not possibly, definitely the more important thing. Exhumations have started in a mass grave in Izium, the city that President Zelensky visited. Was it yesterday? Was it 2 days ago? You know, that have just been liberated, and talks are of well over 400 people buried in a mass grave that has been uncovered. It's a shocking sight, so much so that even the UN is considering sending a team in because of that. Bodies of Ukrainian soldiers were discovered with hands tied, which means that they were summarily executed, as opposed to having fallen in battle. Because you know what tied hands means, right? It means that the person certainly wasn't resisting anymore at the point at which they were killed. and in this case, you would say summarily executed or murdered rather than killed. The Ukrainian military has, however, managed to capture another, a number of things in the area, a number of ammo depots, and now the sheer quantity of munitions that Ukraine has managed to capture in and around Izium has been kind of clarified. CJ notes that it's several hundreds of thousands of rounds of ammunition, if not in excess of 1 million. And I'll leave these things to CJ. CJ understands these things a lot better than I do, and can kind of eyeball all of the pictures of ammo depots that have been seized and get a grasp, get an idea of just how much munitions there are there, because he's an artilleryman. So I think that's those are the main things in Ukraine, I would say. Something else that happened elsewhere that is somewhat adjacently related. Portugal became the 26th country to ratify the Finnish and Swedish accession to NATO. You've probably heard of that. Greece was 25th yesterday, Portugal 26th today. The Spanish Senate and the Slovak Parliament are probably doing it on Tuesday for number 27 and 28. Then it will be just the two, ugly ducklings that we'll still have to do it afterwards. Just a point, because it's tangentially related, because Finland and Sweden would not have been applying were it not for naked Russian genocidal aggression against Ukraine in the first place. What else should we say? Of course, yesterday we heard that the US is providing another $600 million worth in the newest package, including more HIMARS ammunition, quite a lot more 105 millimeter munitions for the lighter howitzers, the 4-inch howitzers, of which there are many dozens, possibly close to 100 in Ukraine, provided by a number of different allied nations, mostly from the Anglosphere, maybe possibly entirely from the Anglosphere. So that's really interesting. But only 1,000 rounds of 155 millimeter munitions, all of them precision guided munitions, none of the regular stuff. CJ speculated earlier today that this could be because of the sheer quantity of Soviet type munitions, so 152 and 122 that Ukraine has captured in Kharkiv Oblast now. Just means that Ukraine doesn't really need more conventional 155 munitions just now, and maybe they'll get some more when they need them again. I reckon it was simply because a few of the most recent batches had so much 155 munition that Ukraine just is still working through those in the first place. So that's very significant, right? You still see staunch support from across the pond, which is crucial, because this is what Ukraine needs to be able to continue this and to continue driving Russian occupational troops, Russian invaders, out of their country and liberate the territories and restore territorial integrity. Lastly, an interesting statement came out yesterday, and by interesting, I mean appalling, came out yesterday from the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, saying that Ratko Mladic, the butcher of Srebrenica, should be released from his prison in the Netherlands on humanitarian grounds because he's of poor health. And there's some commentary that they're just trying to set the precedent for when their own genocidal war criminals end up being indicted and imprisoned, that they might be able to feign illness and thus get out of it. I think that's it. That's what I can think of. I'm sure there were many more things, but I simply cannot think of them.
Well, thank you for the geopolitical roundup. I do appreciate it. By the way, I only sent the Leon Panetta statement as to the just the nature of the conversation in the power of elite still reflecting on the tertial threat of tactical nuclear devices. And in no way was I saying that I believed it, but that these people are still conversing in that tone, in that context, and also in that arena of fear that is. I did not want to do anything except to just educate as to the conversations, even amongst Democrats in America, as to that as a tacit consideration in the negotiations to come. And I just wanted to offer that. I did not want to I didn't want to cause any problems or any kind of, I wasn't saying that. I just wanted to say that Leon Panetta, who was the CIA director and the Defense Secretary of the United States under Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, and so it was, that at that level they are still, they're still putting that out as being a consideration, and you know that's what I was in for a few years. So it always is. It's ever present until we destroy the shit, until it's just destroyed or decomposed or put into power plants in Germany, which is where it should be.
Oh, couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more.
Yes.
That last sentence, absolutely. No, that's quite right. And now there have been some talk coming out of various places about questions of, could this be escalatory? At this point, I just want to remind everyone that 2 weeks ago, the Russian Ministry of Defense noted that they have destroyed 4 Bradley infantry fighting vehicles on the Kherson front, and they just noted it in a press release. They didn't blow a lid, they didn't blow a gasket, they didn't blow anything. They just noted it in a press release, which means quite clearly Western-made infantry fighting vehicles are not considered escalatory by the Russian administration. They have made this much clear by not reacting in the slightest to the lie that they've made up themselves, that they've actually destroyed 4 Bradley IVs, because they're not actually present in Ukraine. But that's not the point. The point is that Russia doesn't consider it escalatory, and we know that they don't, because they've lied about it and they didn't complain about it. So the whole nonsense argument some people keep trying to present about Russia considering various things escalatory is nonsense, and people should best ignore it and just push on along and send lots of heavy weapons to Ukraine, lots of tanks and IVs and the like. That's a separate point from a while ago.
Surprise. I'm surprised that they lied. Not whatsoever. Really, thank you very much for all the work you do, Billman. Please get some rest this weekend.
Absolutely.
You've had a 100-hour week. I know that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Douglas.
Yeah. Hey.
Victoria, go ahead.
Yes, I have a question to the experts. Just read the news. Our Air Force speaker said that around 800 items of aviation, including 430 jets, Russian jets, and 340 helicopters, are right now around Ukrainian territory. What does it mean for us? Can anyone explain?
So I want to say that's not very different. So the Ukrainian Ukrainian Air Force releases these notes every so often. There's so many helicopters, so many jets around, but it's basically the same every time they release it. But they release it quite rarely, maybe every 3 weeks or something. But if you look at the numbers, they're always basically the same numbers, which basically means they do a count, they do a release, but they don't really contextualize what that means. It's just a count up of what is within 200 kilometers or so of internationally recognized Ukrainian borders.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's not a change. It means the same thing that it did, a month ago and 2 months ago and 3 months ago.
I think this is what they're missing. We're still missing a little bit on the communication skills, because I really didn't follow that statistics, and it's really all about putting it into perspective and from the historical point of view. If it's just the same number, okay, let it be.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's not exactly the same number, but plus minus 50%.
So I'm exaggerating, but you understand what I mean.
Oh, absolutely. No, I first came across this a couple months ago, and I thought, that looks odd. What does that number mean? Then I went and looked into it and thought, okay, that's about the same as they had in March. And then it came out again a couple of weeks later, and people asked me, what does this mean? I said, well, it's the same number as it was. It's a few more jets and a few fewer helicopters than it was 2 weeks ago. What does it mean? Nothing. It means the same thing as it did before. Something that Axel, who used to serve in the Air Force, actually the German Air Force, keeps saying is that the Russian Air Force is there, but they're not using it very effectively. They're not using it very effectively in a command arm sense. They're not using it very effectively in many senses. And that's really lucky for Ukraine, really, because Russia just isn't able to use their air force in a way that, say the US with the way they operate an air force. They'd be able to cause a lot more devastation if they were better at using their air force, basically. But also, what else was I going to say? Right, yes, Ukrainian destruction and suppression of American air defenses. American air defenses. Russian air defenses. I got myself confused now because it's getting late.
You need some.
Has allowed Ukrainian air force to fly a lot more, especially on the right bank of the Dnipro in Kherson Oblast. They managed to be flying a whole lot more than before, and actually HIMARS really helped in that because and the HARM missiles, the radar-seeking missiles, really helped in that because they managed to destroy a whole lot of Russian air defense systems that were in Kherson Oblast on both banks, but especially in the right bank, and that really helps the Ukrainian air force kind of spread its wings now. I think that's really important as well. The Ukrainian Air Force that the Russians claim they've destroyed about 7 times over in its entirety by now.
Truly appreciate your comment, Domin. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. Florian, let's talk about presenting statistics and explaining what numbers mean.
No, I had a question. I was wondering if there was a discussion on the Samarkand meeting of I think it's called the Shanghai Cooperation Group, because it showed actually that a lot of countries are now distancing from Russia. Mr. Modi of India told Mr. Putin publicly, this is not the era of war anymore, something like that. I was wondering how many of the potential allies or half allies are now walking away. I was wondering if there was some discussion on this. Also, Mr. Putin made a speech on saying they're not really putting out the real guys. It's still a special military operation that can escalate so on in force. I was wondering if there was any debate.
Yeah, there are still inmates in Russian prisons that have not yet been deployed. That is true.
Yeah, especially drug addicts.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the level of the sheer goal to be launching the propaganda that they're launching out into the media sphere out of Russia is astounding and appalling at the same time. Who else are they going to send? The first Guards tank army got destroyed. The 810th Naval Infantry Guards Naval Infantry got destroyed to the point that 85% of them are dead. Who else are they going to send? Who are these mystical, magical, proper military force that they're going to send? Are they recruiting in prisons because the people there are better than the ones that are better trained than the ones they're replacing that served in elite divisions that were tasked with guarding Moscow in case the West attacks? I mean, come on, it's
but more on the international side of things.
Oh, absolutely. I'll get into that in a second. I just think Nick wants to comment briefly on the quality of various Russian units and how it's definitely not how they're definitely not getting better as time goes on.
Yeah,
is that right, Nick?
Yeah, absolutely. So Florian, one of the things that you could actually look at is how they've been, quote unquote, creating new units that only come into effect about 1 month and then they're signing them out. Those have been highly ineffective. And as well, you're just seeing units still put out there that are combat ineffective. So when I say combat ineffective, I believe, and Colonel Spencer may actually correct me on this, but last time I remember was about 40%. So if you get 40% or below, you're essentially combat effective, and it's even closer than that. So it's just amazing that there's still these units and that they claim that more are coming. They put out their best that they have. They don't have any others to pull from.
If I may ask, Nick, what is the minimum infantry training that is usually necessary? I was a conscript here in Switzerland. This was about 4 months.
Yeah.
And I think I know nothing about it.
So specifically for me, I was communications. So For me, it took about 6 months just to get there from a communications aspect. But infantry, from my understanding, last I remember from talking to those guys, I think it was there about 4 months or so. But it may have changed. I was in 2010, 2006 timeframe. So very, very good question. But then also you got to think about unit cohesivity, exercises you have to go to in order to be combat ready. So for me, just speaking in my experiences, when we got back from Iraq, we had kind of these thresholds of trainings. First, it would be like, let's go out to the range. Okay. Then we go out and do exercises. Then we have even longer exercises. And then we have a whole month in this called National Training Center in California, where we do operations against quote unquote enemies that are made out of this fake country. But it's just, you can't just cobble together people and expect them to work together. There's so much complexity from a unit perspective and how they have to work together, and it's never perfect, but just wanted to say that.
And just to note right now, the training that's being done in the UK, I think that's about 5 weeks now is basic training, and then those units go back to Ukraine fully equipped, but aren't put exactly in frontline roles immediately. They go into additional training when they're back in Ukraine as well. So that's kind of when needs must kind of training. That really have highly motivated units and in a time of desperate need.
Absolutely. I mean, you wouldn't mention the UK training program without mentioning its international partners: Canada, Sweden, Denmark, Holland, Estonia, Finland. Did I miss anybody? Norway.
You missed Norway and New Zealand.
New Zealand, right? Okay, so it's very much a multinational effort. I think the Brits might be outnumbered by blasted foreigners by now, right?
I think in aggregate, yes, the blasted foreigners might now be more numerous than the Brits. I have to also note that. I need to note now as well that Denmark is starting its own separate training program on top of that, which got some repute, as well as there now seems to be some organizing between the Poles, the Germans, and the French to be starting a similar training program in continental Europe as well, which I think is quite interesting. I think Finland's going to be doing some stuff in Finland as well, if I understood correctly, but let's see. Colonel Spencer, what do you think? How much training is needed to get an effective basic infantryman?
So that's a great question, actually, that the U.S. Army has struggled with based on operational demands. Right now, it's sitting at all basic training for any basic soldier entering the U.S. Army, probably around 10 weeks. That's the basic training. And then you go off as a private to your individual, whatever job it is. So infantry would do an additional 14 weeks. So that's 24 weeks. And that's a lot of learning in that. Of course, that's not saying if you did less, you would be, it's not enough. But to do it right, it takes weeks, not like 5 days that we've seen Russians doing. And, it's real. I love the science of it as well, because it is about baselining everybody, right? So I don't care if you've been in the military for a long time, and that's why we actually, if you come out of the military for a long time, we'll send you back to phases of the base level training just to get you standardized with the way the Army does now. But they're also, warfare is about a belief in yourself and a belief in control as much as it is in capability. So basic training is about taking a civilian and turning them into a soldier. Literally, that's 10 weeks to do that. And to learn things like, why is this, care of equipment is so important? Why is it important to be, eat healthy, things like that. And then the rest of the time is built on individual skills based on the job that you will be doing. But as a private who shows up to his unit, now it's at 24 weeks, that's when his training actually begins. And I really loved I think it was it Chris or somebody that was talking about the collective training that units will do, that they'll do a cycle where they'll take everybody back down to basic training, like requalify everybody on the weapon, as a group, because as you guys have heard me say, warfare is about a group fighting. So to say an individual soldier received this much training, you received that much training, that's important, because you have to give the individual soldier, you have to turn that person into a soldier and give them the basic skills of shoot, move, communicate, first aid, things like that. But the psychology of that is you're also giving them a sense of control. Because the worst thing you can do is take a person and just throw them on the front line in a combat situation, and then they internally feel like they have no control, they have no idea what they're doing. Nothing they'll do is going to save them. Training is also about giving somebody that sense of control, that familiarity with their weapon, with the task that will lead to their survival and their ability to contribute to the group. Same thing with the group. The reason that the group will collectively train, and why it's so awesome to see, you know, Ukrainian units being pulled out to baseline them on individual skills, but also train them as a group to build that control.
So in that context, what are your thoughts on the sort of roughly 5-week-long basic training program that's now being conducted in the UK, but this multinational group of trainers? How much more do you think is needed once they get back to Ukraine before they can be, combat effective? You see what kind of warfare there is in Ukraine, of course, right? And the different possible roles. How long do you think they need afterwards to get to the level of being combat effective?
It's unit specific. Your training never stops. So yeah, you can, and this is what we've learned with like some of the artillery training, things like that. You can shave time off by your purpose of the training, by how many hours you put into it, by there's ways, and the reason that it takes 10 weeks in U.S. Army base training, because of, there are days that could definitely be cut and that aren't needed, but there's also the sense of, again, it's the process as much as the learning value. I think it's amazing, the 5 weeks, or because it's very concentrated, and it's not, and there are levels of proficiency between the people that are already being trained. How much would be more? Any more is great, but this is also the benefit of Ukraine having interior lines, is you never stop training. I trained in combat. We would, if you combat is, moments of fear and chaos, but it's actually a lot of waiting around. So that's what our system is designed to do, where I at the lowest level, company, platoon, when I was a squad leader, if you weren't fighting, you were training. If you weren't making your position better, it's always nonstop. But that collective training, 5 weeks, I'm sure was a hard decision based on many factors of resourcing, getting them back in there. That is a great amount of time, but I guarantee it's not all that they're getting.
Thank you very much, Colonel Spencer. Earlier today, there was some news about Ukraine having retaken Yarova in the north of Donetsk, right there next to Sviatohirsk, where the monasteries are. There have also been now, very confirmed reports that all of the left bank of the Oskil, the east bank of the Oskil, has been retaken. And now I see the Colonel Spencer experiencing technical difficulties and had to drop. Well, very well. I will ask him again when he comes back. It's almost like yesterday when he was driving in that rainstorm. Tim, Axel, is there somewhere where we should go in the meantime?
Well, we were wondering right a few minutes ago whether we could highlight yet again as to why MriyaAid is such a fantastic organization, and who better than Alex Bacchus, who could say about the logistical quality of exactly that effort.
If only you could, ask him to log on. I think that'd be great.
I will do so.
I think you're too late. I think he's already connecting.
Getting him up.
This is the efficiency. Now let's just see if the technology will cooperate. And here is Alex. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you, Doman, and of course, extreme gratefulness to Axel for the olive branch and the drop under the bus at the moment as I visit him. He's just so apt at just putting me on the spot. Phenomenal.
I'm impressed that Axel grows olive trees in Estonia.
You know, this man is a man of many talents. He's got a little heater action here, just separate. You know, it's in one of his many saunas. You know, every place you visit, there's a sauna, and one of them runs a little light, and there's a little olive tree. So he's got olive branches to hand out, plenty. So while I'm here in the next couple of days, you know, I'll make sure to introduce some hydrogen peroxide into that soil so that it grows even better.
We all know what olives want, right? They need more oxygen.
Yes.
Yeah.
And hydrogen. Talking about things making go boom. The really interesting bit is that we are definitely sort of inching our way towards 75% on our fundraiser for the drones, and this is the latest shipment. Again, 8 drones of various different tactical capability, and the beautiful thing about them is that the mission control to these drones, I just want to remind the audience here as to the innovation here. So I think some of you may have been participants, and I hope many of you were there when Sonic and Verlaine and the crew that visited Ukraine were talking about them and talking about the capability. But I think that the underlying thing that I think nobody can offer is that we have a single mission control system, and it can operate multiple drones. And so this is a very key piece of technology, because if you can imagine that you have different tactical missions, there's day flights, night flights, flights with little latches that things go boom, you know, that we don't want to talk about because we're only non-lethal aid in MRIA aid. And so what we're really excited about is the sort of the amount of capability and the extensibility of this platform. And so we're very fortunate to work with a company out of UK, and for them to be our partner. And you know, Axel and I are going to try and work and find ways to supercharge this program. So if we're very lucky, and if we continue supporting, and if we continue getting support from our amazing audience and our community here that we've built, and just to like a round of applause to everybody that's here right now, giving us your time, giving us your ear. You know, dear people, lend me your ears. It's such a phenomenal privilege to be here with you, and I'm actually very grateful, because a lot of the buzz, a lot of the support, all the retweets, all the pleasant messages really make this worth it for us. Because, you know, certainly, you know, every day we face challenges, we face critiques and criticisms, and things don't always go to plan. But we are extremely grateful for our community here, and I'm super proud to sort of be here and be a representative of you. And so, a round of applause to everyone, please. You know, look, if you're sort of next to each other, and, you know, look to the left, look to the right, look the person in the eye, and sort of acknowledge and sort of be grateful for. You know, as I'm doing it to Axel, he's blushing, so that's really good. So I think it's very important, because I think we are always so, you know, we get mirrored down in the day-to-day. There's a lot of tasks. There's always too many to-dos and not enough sort of time in the day to do it. and we keep coming back to this community. We keep understanding that this community is energy. It is our superpower. It is where we get our motivation on dealing with challenges. And that's not to even mention the amount of awesome work that our Ukrainian brothers and sisters are doing on the front line, but they're doing the hard fight, and the moral support comes from you guys. And so in a gender neutral term of that word. And I digress a little bit, but thank you again. I just want to reiterate that, and thank you for the support. And I'll send out a tally shortly or tonight, just to sort of see where in the 70% we are by the evening. And so again, super grateful to be here with you and be part of this community.
Thank you, Alex. Paramus.
Now, Alex, these are the drones that were designed in concert with MriyaReport, and specifically non-lethal. And although they may have the capabilities of dropping, say, a pop to troops on the front, because they get thirsty. I had an idea. Is there a possibility to maybe put a dog tooth notch halfway down that delta wing, and the "Don't walk here" lines, like on the wing of the arrow?
It's an interesting proposition. Battle Moose, send me a DM, please, just so I understand exactly what it is. I think it's a really cool shout out to our NAFO or NAFO community, and certainly I think I can imagine UAV Tech and us cooperating and finding a way to promote the good cause for the good people that are doing.
Oh, this has nothing to do with NAFO. This is just a piece of Canadiana.
Oh, my bad. I misunderstood you. But thank you. Why don't we?
Why not both?
Exactly. Don't.
Yeah, we should start putting nose art on these things.
Some of them don't have noses. Just say it.
So how do they smell?
They have two eyes, and sometimes eyes that see in the night.
You're supposed to say awful. Never mind.
Oh, hold on, I'm terribly sorry. Axel is trying to communicate some very detailed instructions to me, and I have to drop down. Thank you again.
Thank you, Alex. Let's hear out Yaroslav. Hi, Yaroslav.
Hello, good evening. I would like to ask a question to anyone knowledgeable technically about these things. Personally, it's quite clear that this war has brought to light the immense importance of drone and anti-drone tech in modern warfare. Would there be any other technology sort of on the horizon that, according to any of you, is or future development?
Well, I think that a lot of the militaries around the world are going to be playing catch up with what's going on in Ukraine in terms of drones, both offensive, defensive, recce. I've said on the space, and Colonel Spencer, Major Drew have said as well that we are going to be studying what is going on in Ukraine for years. It'll be taught in war colleges for generations to come, because they're literally revolutionizing warfare. Before our eyes, warfare is changing, and Yeah, the countries of the world, especially the Western NATO countries, although we do have drone capabilities, we're not employing them on the level that Ukraine is. Anti-drone capabilities. I think this is probably the second or third time we've seen them tested in battle. Some of the far-fetched stuff like EMP guns and the I can't remember. It's I keep on wanting to think of a Klingon disruptor, but essentially that's what it is. It's a particle beam. Yeah. So the Ukrainians have Klingon disruptors, and they're firing at them and whatnot. It's not a laser per se, but that's the best description I can come up with it. And if you don't watch Star Trek, I'm sorry, you probably should. Did that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, partially. I'm sort of aware about these electromagnetic weapons. They've been on the horizon for a few years now. But apart from drones and countering drones, is there anything that is kind of emerging?
Well, I think your best bet would be go look at Jane's online, and because internationally on the weapons front, there or popular mechanics or something like that, because they're the realm of future speculation, and it's not something we really get into. And for the most part, although Ukraine has been given some pretty modern stuff, even the HIMARS and if they get the ATACMS and whatnot, those are products of the 80s and 90s. Right? They're not that modern. We're not seeing cutting edge equipment. Maybe aside from some of the optics that we don't really know about. The signal, the SIGINT stuff. They're basically using NATO equipment, and the message is getting passed along. Other than that, definitely not employed in the Ukraine battle space. But the coolest thing I've seen is the Americans were testing field testing lasers on missile intercept lasers on some of their cruisers, on the Ticonderogas, or the ones that they still have anyways. But these things are cool. And the whole point was, they're putting a laser on there. The whole point behind having the laser is you basically have an unlimited supply of them. You have an unlimited number of shots, as long as your reactor's running or your generator's running and producing the charge for it. You have an unlimited number of shots to intercept incoming projectiles. This becomes salient when you're talking about adversaries like China that can volley enough weapons at you that you're going to have trouble intercepting every one. And each one of those will kill an aircraft carrier. So it's vitally important that you intercept that. But I digress. It looks like they tried out the rail guns with mixed success. And it seems that they're not very practical. So I don't think we're going to see a deviation from the old C1A1 full metal jacket bullet anytime in the near future. There are specialized weapons, specialized sensors and whatnot, but we've been using the bullet, like a projectile, being hurled with some kind of propellant, since the 1600s. So I don't see us deviating from that anytime soon.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you, Yaroslav. Ian.
Recently, Zelensky said that that Russia could only transport ammonia through Ukraine once it gets its prisoners of war back. Do you have any idea what that is about? Because if it's just trade in wartime, why would it have to go through Ukraine? Why can't it go around? Or if it's after the war, why is it specifically ammonia?
I think they were saying that the only way they would allow Russian ammonia to be exported through Ukraine, it would be if they get their prisoners of war back. Does that make sense? It's the other way around. It wasn't that this is, I don't even know how to say it. Okay, so the condition of
Okay, now
Russia
I'm
being
confused.
the condition for Russia to be allowed to transfer ammonia through Ukraine is that Russia gives back Ukrainians to Ukraine. It's not the other way around. The way you framed your question, Ian, was it sounded like it was the other way around. That's why I think you were possibly confused.
No, it's more that why would Russia want to transport ammonia through Ukraine
There's
now?
a big pipeline.
It's a pipeline.
There's a
That makes
pipeline.
sense.
Ammonia is hard to transport because you need to move a lot of it. And it was closed after February 24th. And Russia has not been able to export the ammonia it usually exports because it usually goes through Ukraine through a pipeline. Now, the reason why that's a big deal is because Russia is a major producer of synthetic fertilizers, because synthetic fertilizers require a lot of energy to produce, so they're usually produced wherever energy is cheap. And energy is cheap in Russia because I don't need to explain that. But you need lots of it, right? So if you put it on rail cars, you're going to need like thousands of trains every year. But if you put it in a pipeline, it's a lot easier because you just build out the tubes and then just send it down there, and it goes onto ships, right? So that's why, because it's very difficult for Russia to export the quantity of ammonia it did produce previously without pushing it through that pipeline, because then building out anything else would take a while. That's basically it.
That makes sense. Thanks. I just thought, like, why can't they just train it through Belarus or something?
Nope, that's literally it. It's all about logistics. Wait, is Craig listening? No, Craig isn't listening. So if I said it 2 more times, maybe he'd have appeared. But it's all about logistics. It's all about the ability of Russia to actually export the ammonia, and the rest of the world obviously wants the ammonia because ammonia is important for artificial fertilizers, and without fertilizers, stuff doesn't grow as well. And I think that's what I have to say. And currently, there's something of a global shortage of fertilizers because Russia is such a big exporter normally. Okay, thank you, Ian. See, Moose, a question for you, then a question for me. It's good, work in tandem. Okay, who else wants to come up? If you have any questions to ask, just press that request button at the bottom left corner of your screen, and we will bring you right up. You have Axel, you have Tim, you have Moose, you even have me for another few minutes probably, who are very happy to talk to you about various questions you might want to have answered. And we're going to be joined by Vinayak. Let's see who Vinayak is. Didn't bother to set an avatar, but then again, very much deserved answering, and I think we've reached before. Vinayak, go ahead.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Vinayak from India, and I understand right now we are one of the most liked people in this group, and I've been following this group quite obsessively for the last few weeks. So I just want to ask this question: what is the strategic future for our country if and when the Russian Empire falls?
So I'll put it this way. I think that the Indian government's been making a big strategic mistake for a long time by relying quite heavily on Russia. The principal reason that the Indian government puts forward, and the various Indian analysts put forward, as to why India was staying, quote unquote, neutral in the various United Nations votes and United Nations Security Council votes, was that they're kind of dependent on spare parts for the fighter jets and other things that they have of Russian manufacture, and therefore they have to remain neutral. What I think it really shows is that India's been making a very big strategic mistake for a very long time because they were relying on these Russian exports in the first place, where China was also relying on the same set of stuff, and China being the one big, let's say, counterpoint to India, the one big strategic risk to India, other than Pakistan. But that China is really the big one, right? Why would India ever trust Russia that Russia would pick India over China in the event that there was a war between India and China? And that's the question that the various analysts never can answer, because the answer is always, well, we can't. And that's the answer that goes against the logic with which the Indian government has been doing what it's been doing. So yeah, that's basically what I have no problems whatsoever, nor does anybody else with the many good people of India. In a country of over 1 billion, there are bound to be several tens, even hundreds of millions of good people among them. So there's with Indians themselves. We're just a bit skeptical of some actions and rather inaction of the Indian government, because India as a democracy, we think, should align with its fellow democracies, as opposed to a regime that's trying to commit genocide in the country next to it. But I think that you're on the same page here, Vinayak.
If I may, I feel that the Indian government has made a not a strategy, but a blunder. They have made a blunder in supporting Russia. Not only are they losing,
I agree.
not only are they losing, and if 60% of our military imports are from Russia, and we have seen how their military hardware work, I think we are in very, very big trouble. We are really in very big trouble. And this will haunt us in the future. This will definitely haunt us in the future.
I completely agree. That's pretty much exactly what I said earlier. Yeah, I completely agree with that.
And
that's exactly the strategic blunder that.
Being a colonial outpost for the Britain, how can we support a country that's bullying other country? This is absolutely unreasonable. And this has been a really traumatic experience for us. There are a lot of people who have been supporting Ukraine, but our local politics takes most of the what should I say, the headlines. But this has been very short-sighted line taken by our political what should I say, leadership, and this has been really a very short-sighted effort taken by our leadership, and we will suffer. We will suffer in the long term. There is no way Ukraine is going to be defeated, and I really believe they should win. Russia is the bully, and Russia has been doing it for the last 8 to 10 years, not 8 to 10 years, last 20 years, doing whatever they want, and we are going to suffer for this for the next 20 years.
Well, I do have a problem with India. They're too good at cricket.
Thank you. Okay, thank you so much for letting me ask.
And thank you very much. We sincerely appreciate what you just voiced, because the fact of it's like with Germany, and I'm German, as you will probably know. If you act in an amoral fashion, if you do not help thy neighbor in trouble, and on this bloody globe, technically everyone is our neighbor in one way or another. If we fail to act when liberty, property rights, freedom, and sovereignty of nations is attacked in such a fashion, we act amorally, especially in the 21st century. So we shan't do that, because that is, and I'm not a believer in karma, but I tend to believe that this will come back to haunt us. Therefore, I fully agree with you.
Thank you. I hope Narendra Modi has learned his lesson when he said that today is not a era of war. But I feel more it was a political statement rather than a statement to actually tell Russia that they are doing wrong. I don't know. Really, I don't know. Thank you. Thank you for giving.
Vinayak, I think you raise an important deeper point here, is that the Soviet Russia, Russia and the Soviet Union before it, they have been very adept at rebranding aggression. Right. They've been very, very skillful at kind of leveraging this kind of post-colonial ideology and post-colonial ideas and setting themselves in opposition to them. We had a gentleman from Ghana on the channel a few days ago who was saying very sensible things about this. Russia are very good at saying, well, it's not imperialism when we do it. When we do it, it's the opposite of imperialism. And I think this is something that, you know, I like to think the people of India see right through this, right? And I like to think that this is something they will call bullshit on. You know, a country invading and colonizing and genociding its neighbors. I mean, there's, you know, that is straight up imperial aggression.
I think we have been through this thing, and it's time that we should understand this, because we have been through this thing. We have had this thing for the last 200 years. We have been colonized by the British, and if we don't understand right now, it's very difficult that the future generation will understand. And us Indians supporting Russia just because we get some cheap oil or military hardware, it's not going to go anywhere. We are actually letting bullies do as they want, and someday that will happen to us. Someday China is going to do that to us, and then we will not. Nobody's going to help us. That's the point. Who is going to help us when China comes to our shores? Yes, we have a great military. Not that great. Yes, I expect that. We still have MiG-21s flying. That's 70 years old. But when China was at the border, nobody's going to fight for us. Nobody's going to help us. And that short sightedness is going to hurt us in the long term. I still don't see how we are going to get ahead of this, how we are going to be a world power or a superpower. Forget a superpower, just a world power. If we have these shortcomings in our political leadership, we are going to just justify killings, and we are going to justify all the mass graves and everything because we're going to just get some cheap oil or military hardware. That's absolutely immoral nonsense, I think. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little emotional, but I've been trying to voice my concern for the last few weeks, but I was very scared whether I'll be able to speak or not. That's it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's quite all right. I mean, I would point out on the issue of India's military. India has something that China doesn't. India has a military tradition. India has a tradition of fighting on the side of right, and I think this is something that China doesn't have, and this is a very, very potent thing.
Yes, but this time we haven't taken the right, what should I say, right side. We should have supported Ukraine from the start. The moment the tanks rolled on 24th February, we should have supported Ukraine, and we should have seen the writing on the wall. There was no way Russia is going to capture all of Ukraine. There was no way. And this was a short-sighted move from the political leadership completely. And they didn't see that. And now that Mr. Modi's voicing is concerned, I think that's a bit of opportunistic, what should I say, opportunistic political leeway, you can say, and it is not right. Now that the Russians have had some tactical retreats and all that, now that the Russians on the back foot, now Mr. Modi is saying today is not an era of war. That's quite too late. Too late. So you see, a lot of people go from India to study in Ukraine for medical and engineering purposes. This is too late. It's too late. I think it's too late. We should have been there from the first day. We should have been there from the first day. We should have supported Ukraine. And if we are relying on old Soviet Union military hardware, means what I saw from HIMARS, we don't have nothing. We don't have anything like that. We don't have anything like that, and we are still relying on MiG-21s and MiG-29s, and the only fourth gen aircraft fighter that we have is the Rafale 35 fighters we have right now, and we are getting behind completely. I don't think we can stand anywhere now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Abdulaziz, welcome up. A very good evening to you.
Good evening, Tim. Dom and Tim, you guys are doing an amazing job holding it for so long and so well. I actually had a question to Vinayak, and thank you for his comments. It would be great to hear what the sentiment is in the population. We know what the politics of the government is, but what's the sentiment of the people, and what's their position, or what are their views in regard to the Russian aggression on Ukraine?
If I may, mostly we are still concerned with the local politics, national politics. There's not much concern, and mostly the news channels here are saying that this is some sort of a Western intervention that has been done. But nowadays, since the Kharkiv offensive began, the tone has shifted. The tone has shifted. Now people have seen that Ukraine can do the job, and the tone has shifted. But earlier, mostly it was that it was a Western instigation, and Putin was forced to do that because of our long Soviet ties. But right now, the tone has shifted, and there is a general undercurrent that the Russians are losing. The Russians are losing, and we need to recalibrate our position vis-a-vis that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, if there's anybody out there that wishes to come up and speak, please request to come up, and Tim and Doman will happily bring you up. We're going to be in the midst of a co-host change here soon, so hopefully Tim and Doman haven't fallen asleep. With that, when you come up, please raise your hand, and we'll answer you in order. Comments or questions?
Patricia. Patricia? Patricia Lysander? Okay. Patricia was put up her hand, then dropped it back down. I think she might be struggling with the mic or temporarily indisposed. Last call for Patricia. No, okay, just put up your hand whenever you can. Abdulaziz?
Yeah, I found Vinayak's statement very interesting, how the Kharkiv offensive seems to have changed views and the mood. And it's interesting to see, and it would be interesting to hear from people around the world if they have felt the same shift, just because now, oh, we know who the winning side is. And it's just an interesting observation that, a flag will turn or opinion will change based on who you perceive to be. Just as a comment. Thank you.
It is an interesting comment, and when I do go in the office, I'm in Canada, and when I do go in the office, I not everybody has the same fervor for Ukraine as I do. I'm a little bit vested into it, and so is everybody here at MriyaReport. So, we're pretty biased with our opinion. It's never changed. We knew they were winning from day one. They had to win. It was no questions asked. They had to win. It was an existential fight for existence, right? And when the large counteroffensive started, and we seen them advance through the Kharkiv region, through the Oblast, and pushing the Russians here, there, and everywhere. I did get approached by some people and go, "Hey, how about those Ukrainians? They're really sticking it to the Russians." I'm going, "They've been sticking it to the Russians for 8 years." So it's important that that the people, although their heart is in the right place, and they're saying yes, that I like to see Ukraine win. We have to educate them that this is a far deeper and more complex problem than just Ukraine winning. They have been in this fight for 8 years. It's great that they're on the cut. They have momentum. They have momentum now, and they're taking advantage of it. They have momentum, and even more so, the Russians have lost momentum. They're on their heels. They don't know whether they're coming or going. They're emptying out their prisons. And all that's going to be is more meat into the grinder. So one of the key factors of the Maria report is education. And if we can all go and bring some people that are close to us, so we can bring them into the fold and educate them a little bit on the geopolitical situations that are going on there. And it's not just, there's another war someplace going on somewhere. And I know in the West we get like that. There's another conflict somewhere, whatever. I see blips of it on the news. It is imperative that we don't let this die in the 24-hour news cycle. It cannot, it will not, we cannot let it happen.
On that bombshell, thank you for that, Battle Moose. I must be disappearing because I have to go to bed. So I'll leave you in the capable hands of our North American team.
I'm here.
I'll see you. And I will see you, I guess, over the weekend. Cheers then. Enjoy yourselves, everybody.
Take care, Tim.
Patricia, let's try again. There's an unmute button in the bottom left corner of your screen somewhere. And it's currently red, and it should be sort of bluish purple. Patricia? Okay, I think Patricia is having serious technical issues. I will drop Patricia down to listener, and if she wants to come back up, she can do so. But in the meantime, we are going to be facing a Viking invasion, possibly, if Twitter cooperates.
Did you say Viking invasion?
Yes, the John's from Sweden. Look at his fella. I was asking,
give me a second while I go hide my loot.
And I was asking him if he's drinking port and Madeira tonight, because Finland, as well as Sweden, just got ratification of the 26th out of the 30 NATO member states, and the 26th was Portugal, which produces several excellent wines, including port and Madeira. John?
Yeah, unfortunately, I have to defer it for tomorrow because I was working past closing time of Systembolaget, and I didn't have either Madeira or port at home. So, but I will catch up tomorrow because they're open until 2 o'clock tomorrow. So that will be okay. That's
very well.
Those are the conditions we live under in Sweden. Just
monopoly conditions and not the board game.
Yeah, exactly.
John, you can just use tap water and call it Vinho Verde.
That's not a bad idea, actually. And it's probably more healthy as well, isn't it?
Did you just say that you can't buy Madeira now?
At this time? No, it's not possible.
Why would there be a time within the 24-hour day in a free country limiting you to buy Madeira?
That's a very good question. I don't have an answer, but honestly, we're quite used to it here. But still, yeah, it's an impediment, definitely. I don't know how long it will last, but that's how it is. At least now we can buy on Saturdays. Before it was only weekdays and until 5 o'clock or something. But now it's a little bit more. It's open until 6 on Fridays and then
weekdays from 4 o'clock until 5 o'clock, and only under supervision.
Yeah, and no parkings outside. Yeah, no, it is what it is. yeah, now I feel ashamed.
Well,
Thanks.
we are happy that you're still producing archers.
Yes, I hope we could produce more. But we also have this.
How is that new coalition coming, then, John?
Honestly, there's not much information coming out. I know there's negotiations and talks, and I think the parliament will open again in what is it now, a week's time or something.
Oh, they open between 4 and 5.
Yeah, exactly, something like that. A bit like the bank. No, but I don't know. I think there's some friction because one of the small supporting parties, the Liberals, they're not keen on cooperating with the Sweden Democrats, the far right kind of party. So let's see. I mean, it will not be an easy task to govern, I think, because they can't afford to lose basically any votes. So let's see how it goes. But I think on Ukraine and support for Ukraine, that won't change. I mean, the middle is strong, I think, on this, so that won't change.
We love to hear that.
Yeah.
The center holds.
Yeah. So that's from the Viking land of Vikings. And Batamus, I won't touch your things. We won't come for it.
No, that's fine. It's I just want to acknowledge that the Vikings are the true settlers.